Hello and welcome. Desperate people have been known to stow away in aircraft by climbing into the wheel wells. This rarely ends well. Here is the story of a chap who didn't have the money for an airfare and decided on another way to stow away. Brian Robson decided to mail himself home in a box. Homesickness is a malady with only one known cure: going home. At the age of 19, an unhappy Brian Robson was working in Melbourne in Australia, but longing to be back home in his native Wales. In 1964, Robson had signed on for an assisted immigration program. His expenses were paid by the Australian government, and in return, he was committed to a 2-year gig with Victorian Railways. Robson regretted the deal almost immediately, but if he didn't live up to the contract, he'd be obligated to pay back close to £800 in travel fees spent getting him to Australia. Not having that kind of money, Robson and two of his work buddies, Paul and John, surnames unknown, hatched a top-secret plan of simply mailing him by airmail home to Wales. Paul typed up the appropriate freight paperwork, and the trio secured a 3 feet by 3 feet by 2 feet wooden crate and made sure it had air holes in it so Robson could breathe. How very thoughtful. He curled up inside the box with only a bottle of water and an empty bottle for obvious reasons, a pillow, hammer, flashlight and a small bag, and thought he was settling in for a 36-hour journey to the United Kingdom. But the trio didn't consider what would happen if the crate were put on the wrong flight. Guess what happened? After nailing the lid closed, his sidekicks marked the box fragile and this side up. From here on, things went wrong. Robson soon found himself being handled with anything but care. The 3-day trip turned into a marathon 5-day odyssey, 24 excruciating hours of which he spent upside down. As the grueling ordeal wore on, Robson considered calling it quits, but in the end decided to soldier on. When the mostly numb Robson finally landed, he thought he was in London, but actually had been routed to Los Angeles. He shone a beam from his flashlight through a hole, and that alerted an airside worker. Although severely dehydrated and pretty banged up, when he was released from the confines of his crate, Robson was delighted to have survived the journey. Airport workers wondered what to do in the bizarre situation and called in many US officials. But after hearing Robson's tale of homesickness blues, the teen was quickly sent home as a first-class passenger courtesy of Pan American Airlines. He said, "The Americans, the FBI, the CIA, and everyone else, they were brilliant. I fell in love with America because I've never been treated so well. Everybody there really looked after me." Once home, Robson's epic story did receive its share of press, but he refused to reveal the names of his accomplices because he didn't want to get them into trouble. Robson would love to get back together with his old mates to swap tales. The trouble is, he can't remember his buddies' last names. If I met them again, I'd just like to say that I'm sorry I got them into this mess and I miss them, and when I come back, I'd like to buy them a drink. While shipping yourself home in a crate is certainly not recommended mode of travel, the same year that Robson was labouring in the land down under, an Australian who was stranded in London pulled off the stunt in reverse. Following an unsuccessful Olympic tryout, Reg Spiers had his wallet stolen, so enlisted the help of a friend to mail him home. In a slightly larger box than Robson's, with interior straps to keep him secured, he suffered only one brutal layover in Mumbai in India before arriving in Perth 36 hours later. In all of this, I assume that airmailing a box is cheaper than an airfare. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and like.